Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
And this is Fish Jelly.
Hello, Clarice.
How are you?
I'm good, Dr. Lecter. How are you?
I'm okay. I've been tired the past few days.
Uh-huh.
Probably riddled with disease.
Riddled with...
Who knows?
I
But
was...
I'm drinking black coffee with sugar, which I don't think I've ever done that.
Why did you do that combination this morning?
Because we watched a movie where the character was like, oh, you were with me and we commented where the character has black coffee and she's like dumping sugar and you were like, oh no, that's too much.
Oh, Bedazzled.
Bedazzled, that's right. Yeah, that's right,
And
actually.
just right before sex with a beautiful woman, just give me a mountain of sugar.
It's not the worst. It's an interesting.
Well, remember the butter craze where people would put their butter in their coffee?
Yeah, we did that a few times.
Did we do that?
Yeah, with Whole30.
Oh,
Remember,
yeah.
we did like the ghee, and then you whip
Mm.
it in the. I didn't need that. Well, then I think because of Whole30, I started trying just black coffee.
Actually, since the first time we did Whole30, I've drank black coffee since then, which is 2015.
I don't mind black coffee.
I mean, I need it for one thing.
Yep, that's very on brand for you.
Chapter 7, Ghee and Me.
So we watched the Chris Rock live Netflix stand-up comedy special.
Yeah, we did.
So we should talk about that.
Oh, right off the...
Unless there's something else you want to talk about first.
No, I mean, it all goes in the munching cave.
What are your initial thoughts of the special?
I thought it was just okay.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I was... Well, everybody's going to be talking about the closer, but... which was the purpose for everyone tuning in the first place, really. Like, this was an event, right? But the only time I really got tickled was his line about the sexual scarecrow.
Oh,
That was...
I'll get to it. So I actually wrote down some things that I think made us chuckle, so
Mhm.
we can talk about it. I thought it was a strong opening because he talks about selective outrage,
Sure.
and he says, "Y'all be sending woke tweets on phones made by child slaves."
Yeah, he had some good points.
He has a line about how there's a waiting list for women to get Elon Musk's cum.
Mhm.
What was that joke about? I already forgot.
I don't
But he was
remember.
saying like he's getting his dick
That's
sucked.
why he looked so funny?
Yeah, he's getting his dick sucked like 20 times or every hour, and that's why he looks so funny. I don't remember the joke. But then he goes on about how he was at the mall and he saw a sign at Lululemon
Mhm.
that said we don't support like racism, hate,
Homophobia.
discrimination, homophobia. And um Chris Rock's like, I'm paying $100 for yoga pants. I just need these. Like, tell me about how they protect my balls or something. But then he goes, I'm sure I agree with everyone in the audience that I would gladly pay for $20 racist yoga pants than these $100
Non-racist.
like anti-hate pants. Then he goes on about how he says there are 4 ways to get attention in
Mhm.
America, and that's all people want is attention. And one is to be excellent, like
That
Serena Williams.
that was his number 3, but yeah.
And then he says, but no one wants to do that because you actually have to get up in the morning and practice and
Mhm.
be consistent. Or you can show your ass like
Mhm.
Black China. Or what was the other one that wasn't a victim? It was be excellent, show your ass.
Be a victim was the last one.
Yeah, what was the first one? I don't remember. But anyway, he talks about victims and he's like, now white men think they're victims. But so then he brings up like
The insurrection.
the insurrection and how like he didn't understand what they were doing. Like these white men were trying to overthrow themselves.
Well, because they didn't understand what they were doing. It's like
Yeah.
those people didn't know that they get the kind of access they did, which is really a reminder of how lax things were in DC. But
Mm. He has a line where he says, when did Snoop Dogg become Morgan Freeman?
Mhm.
Because he's like doing commercials for everything. I did think his bit about Meghan Markle hitting the light skin lottery was funny.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also not, like, crying to Oprah about, "Didn't you not realize these people would be racist?"
He's like, they were
The
like
OG racist.
yeah, he's like, they're the colonizers. Like,
Mhm.
what did you think? I thought that was really funny, actually.
And then he said it was a lot of it was just some in-law shit, because
Yeah.
even black people wanna know how dark the baby's gonna be.
Yeah, like how brown the baby's gonna be. Because we need to know if we're gonna have a Stefan how I want Stephen Curry,
He
Stephen
said Steph
Curry,
Curry.
Steph Curry. Like, am I getting a Steph Curry or a Draymond Green?
Mhm,
Because it's two very different upbringings. Then he has a bit about the Kardashians
mhm.
and how, because he goes on about like, as a black woman trying to get on with your white in-laws, but imagine being a white woman trying to get on with your black in-laws. And then he says that the Kardashians are really like accepting of black people, and that Chris Jenner is like the Statue of Liberty, like bring me your sick and your what.
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny.
Bipolar rapper, come on in here.
Come on
Get
here,
let me fix you a plate.
crackhead basketball player, come on in here. I thought that was funny. And then he talks about how like the Kardashians' dad is like a hero because he got
A different
a football playing murderer,
Uh-huh.
meaning OJ Simpson.
Yeah, I mean,
And then he talks about how OJ Simpson is another kind of black excellence
yeah, because he killed 2 white people and got
because
away with
he
it.
killed two white people. Oh my God. Okay. So I thought the first, like,
I think I was with it for a bit, and
but
then
then when he hits the whole like talking about trans women,
sure,
that felt clunky.
it was clunky because he was trying to have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah. I think he was trying to, I don't know. I mean, I guess I appreciate he was trying to be inclusive, but then I feel like he didn't really have the vernacular to, or that he felt like he couldn't make a joke in a way that would have been I don't know. It just seemed like he was talking about something that maybe he wasn't 100% comfortable with, and then he had talked about saying things that could get him canceled, and but then on this topic, it seemed like he was treading lightly.
It did. It seemed like it was almost in defense of, like, Dave Chappelle. Like, I'm gonna talk
Yeah,
about this shit, and there's nothing you can do."
because he says like in some situations because he says like I'm accepting of everyone. He gave that normal answer. It's like, okay, great. I mean, you said it, so it's fine that you're accepting of everyone. And then he goes, and actually, in some situations, I prefer trans women,
To the
like
original recipe.
to the original recipe. And those situations would be like watching sports,
Mhm.
which is like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't know
It
if he
just
was
wasn't funny.
I don't know if it was yeah, it wasn't his strongest work, so I don't even know if it was necessary.
Okay, but then he gets me back on track because he starts talking about abortion.
Mhm.
And he says he believes a woman should have the right to kill a baby until they are 4 years old.
I mean,
And then he goes on about how like you are killing your baby when you have an abortion. So it's like, ooh. Um, but a line that really hit me hard is he goes, women, if you have to pay for your own abortion, that means you probably should get an
yeah.
abortion. Like, oh my God.
Wisdom from Chris Rock.
Yeah, wisdom. Um, but then he lost me again because he talks about how his daughters are spoiled. And I think what I was waiting for him to say, which is what I think he was trying to say, is that to have these young black women in America have access to all the things that traditionally they didn't have access to is a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Because he ends with that. He talks about how his oldest daughter is in some fancy culinary school in Paris, and that like his mother, who grew up in a time and a place where, you know,
Her dental work had to be done by a vet.
yeah, like black people weren't even allowed to see white dentists, and if they needed assistance and couldn't find a black dentist, they had to go to a veterinarian.
Mhm.
So his black mother, who grew up in a time where she had to see a veterinarian for dental care, is now able to be flown to Paris to see visit her daughter who's in culinary school. So the ending of the bit is beautiful,
Mhm.
but everything leading up to it just felt real tedious. He does this thing like tells a story about his daughter going to this fancy private school and getting kicked out.
Yeah,
It was a little like how Ellen's last special was kind of like, "Ooh, you are very
unrelatable.
rich and
Yeah.
unrelatable, and you're not bringing it back to the people.
Mhm.
Like you're not coming back down to earth sometimes." Eh.
It wasn't bad. It just compared to some of his other specials, I'm like, oh, we're all here to hear about this thing that happened last year, Chris.
Right. And but then he did get me back on board when he talks about, he was being very honest about how now that he's single, because he had a messy divorce and then he was dating and then broke up with that person. Now he's just out here being a hoe.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like saying that men don't date young women because they're young. Older men date young women because they're easy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, a 25-year-old just wants a pair of shoes, but a 50-year-old wants a new roof put on. And then he talks, I thought that was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then you already referenced this, but saying that, like, after you sleep with a 50-year-old woman, you can't just leave because she wants you to help her go get her car from the mechanics. So then you end up there like a sexual scarecrow. So when the mechanic says it's $500, you're gonna be like, no, rah, rah. And then they knock it down to $450. And then he's talking about old bitches have cars you didn't even know existed,
Yeah.
like a Tesla that takes gas
Mm-hmm.
or a Mercedes 308. Like,
But again, that bit is even like, I feel like I've heard Dion Cole do that better about the sleeping with older women versus younger women.
well, the
And
difference is Dion Cole's I mean, his whole thing is that he likes or prefers older
right,
women and heavier women, and he does it much better.
right.
But of course, the closer is what everyone was waiting for, and he talks about Will Smith, who he calls Suge Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and saying how people were asking, "Did it hurt?" And he's like, "Yeah, it hurt." Will is much bigger than I am. Going on about how Will got to play Muhammad Ali
Mm-hmm.
while he was playing Pookie in New Jack
Yeah.
City. Like, that's a big man. But I mean, I do have to say, I think we were both sitting on the couch kind of shocked at what he was saying, because he kind of went in.
He went in a way that I think he'd been biding his time to say this, and he felt angry, as he should be, like on this. Can you get to a bigger public stage where this happens that we all had to witness? And
So yeah, basically he says Will Smith was practicing selective outrage because back when the Red Table Talks, when Pinkett had her husband on her show to bring up the fact that she had an entanglement, an affair, and as Chris Rock puts it, was fucking one of their son's friends, August Alsina.
wasn't keep going. I have a question about him.
August and
Yeah.
his gay relationship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, who I guess is like demisexual. I don't know, but it's like, so what do I look like me bringing up on the podcast how you slept with some other person, and then everyone's, so he's basically saying, like, so then now the world is making fun of Will Smith, calling Will Smith a bitch, and Chris Rock calls Will Smith a bitch like 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
He calls Jada a bitch. But he's like, so the entire world was calling you a bitch for how your wife played you, but then you want to choose to slap me. And then he goes, which is even more crazy because Jada started it, because Jada had said that Chris Rock shouldn't host the Oscars because her husband wasn't nominated for Concussion.
Mm-hmm. Which he shouldn't have been anyway. But
So he was like, so then he's like, this bitch already started some shit with me, so I just finished it by making a comment about her hairdo.
which is the importance of being too, because I remember we recorded a podcast right after that Oscars and talking about,
Yeah.
you know, how black women are targets, making fun of black women's hair, and then that is a thing. And I still remember our conversation and sentiment about that. But then, of course, his side, does kind of broaden. It makes the picture a little bigger here about how he felt about why he could say what he said and what was really behind it.
Well, I still feel like how I felt back then, which is like, if you're going to talk about someone else's, significant other, you should expect some smoke. I mean, that's just how it goes. Like, when you do that, you should expect something. I don't think it's appropriate. To me, Will Smith seems like a brat.
Well, again, to go hit this man on stage,
Right. It's
like,
not
what are you
acceptable.
thinking?
It's not, and you're also both rich. So it's like, you're really putting in jeopardy, like, your money,
well, and then what is
doing dumb shit like that.
and Chris Rock said that people are like, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you respond? He's like, because I was raised.
Yeah. Then he goes, Chris Rock says, like, well, I was raised by parents who taught me better.
And not to fight in front of white people.
Yes. And then he goes, Yeah, Chris says he didn't fight back because his parents taught him that don't fight in front of white people. I mean,
I
I
think that that is the a key point here too, is just look at how people are gonna talk about, like, Will Smith doesn't know better, like he can't control himself, and it's just you make yourself so vulnerable over
Will Smith
something
made
so
a very
petty.
poor choice in doing that for sure. But he and then Chris ends by saying that he watches Emancipation just to see Will Smith get his ass
Yeah.
whooped.
Well, not actually not that much. He's like super slave in that. So
Yeah, but I thought that was funny. So overall, I thought it was pretty good. It did feel kind of hindered by maybe feeling the need to talk about sort of, he uses the word woke, which I hate that word, and um, yeah, and it just felt like he was restricted because of the events of last year and sort of the current social climate.
well, it's like again, it was such a big deal. I don't want to call it a cultural moment, but it's something that I think he needed to address, and then you can move on. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but Chris Rock is an amazing stand-up comedian.
Hmm.
He's very polished and he's very funny.
He's
And
very smart.
yes, and I his first two comedy specials I had on disc, like ripped on disc, that I would listen to all the time. And a lot of the stuff I still can recite because it just was so impactful to me. So he's definitely great, and the special is worth watching.
It is this the whole live thing with Netflix. I don't understand. It's like you're a streaming service. I don't know what the live part really
Well, there was a
does.
pre-show where the comedian who was hosting it was
Ron,
even saying, like,
Ronnie
I
Cheng.
yeah, like, I don't know why we need to do this live.
And you know what? I haven't watched his stand up, but he is funny and cute. And his skills at comedy are better than acting, as in Megan.
Yeah, and Megan, I thought he was probably the worst part, but then
Definitely.
and I didn't know who he was before, but yeah, he's really handsome and funny in the pre-show, so I would definitely watch him in a comedy.
Hmm.
All right, well, moving on. There were a couple of questions. Has anyone from a film confronted you over a negative critique?
Several times. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that comes to mind, a producer on the film, is it Cutthroat City, directed by RZA? Because we filmed something for it, but I also wrote a piece about it at
Okay.
Ion Cinema, and they were upset about the written review. And I want to say they reached
They
out
were
to.
more upset about the written review than the
I don't think
video?
they'd watch the video,
Oh.
because the stuff
Because
on
if I'm included, it's worse.
this stuff on Ion Cinema goes to Rotten Tomatoes. So
Oh, sure.
for now, we'll get there eventually as well. The producer, whose name I don't remember, he was white, because it's usually white men that confront me about those things. He I don't even remember all the messages, but was clearly very upset, and then sent me a clip from the movie Birdman of Lindsay Duncan just eviscerating Michael Keaton in that one. You probably don't remember it, but I do really like Lindsay Duncan, and she, yeah, is just well, an awful bitch, really. But he said that basically I'm this person, this old dragon lady that ruined his uh opening weekend. It made it feel like it's like nobody's reading my shit anyway. But fine, sorry, I didn't like your movie. It's not good. And I think RZA has directed some decent films, but that was not one of them.
Mm.
And then also just recently, while I was in Berlin, I got a nasty message on Letterboxd, basically saying that it was something to the effect of, "Now I understand you have terrible taste in film and you hate Christians." And I was like, "Oh my god."
Well, those are
uh,
two separate things, I feel,
those
but
are
okay.
yeah. Well, also hates. Like, come on.
And
I mean,
hate is a strong word.
but anyway, and then they deleted it. But I happened to screenshot it, and I looked up that person's profile on Letterbox. This person, Ben Mad, I didn't recognize his handle, but he's well, sure, he's a filmmaker, and he made some film called Glitch in the Grid. His name's Eric something or other, that I reviewed back in 2011 or 12, and I remember loathing it. So my review is incredibly negative, and it's such an indie film that I it probably didn't get a lot of coverage. But he been mad.
Well, yeah, please don't come for me though, because you'll just get your feelings hurt for a few reasons. Especially not in public, because
Oh, in public,
I
nobody.
don't know what you think I'm not gonna say, and then also I probably don't remember. So then that's just awkward. Like, you're mad about some. This is why I mean, this is why it's so important to like let go of a lot of anger, because sometimes like you hold on to shit and the other party involved doesn't even recognize that you're upset. And certainly for me, I'm not even going to remember what I said or if I liked something or didn't like it. So if I say some shit you don't like, just charge it to the game because I'm not gonna
But
know.
also, I don't think I'm above or we are above critiques ourselves. But
Of
w-
course not. People say nasty things to me every day,
sure.
literally every day,
Hmm.
every day. Nasty things that I'd have to delete. And I just think like, well, that's just it's it. I'm not trying to validate the crazy shit I say, but we do put a little time into our
Hmm.
opinion, which I think has some value versus like
Oh,
just a drive-by nasty word and then you have this blank profile like, okay.
well, but what I meant to say was constructive criticism, because I think that if the intention is constructive criticism, then of course I'm able to accept that about myself as well, even though
Sure.
sometimes I'm not in the goddamn mood to hear it. But yeah,
And I don't, and like what I'm saying is just my opinion. I don't have any ability to help anyone in any way except maybe with your hair and makeup. So it's like I'm just giving my opinion. I watched something, it's my reaction. I didn't care for it or I loved it. Like you know, I'm one of like many people. And also if many people don't like your shit, then I mean, who are you making it for then? Like,
well, you should be making it for yourself is the bottom line.
but okay, but then that's the problem with a lot of artists, including yourself. Like, you're supposed to be making things for yourself because you love what you do, but then you're very sensitive to like feedback about it. And I just don't think that's you either need to make shit for the people and be open to criticism and just whatever, or you make it for yourself and who cares what people think. Like you're very sensitive about your writing. And it's like, I think it's good and but it doesn't
I
matter.
don't think I
Like,
think sensitive is the wrong word. It's like I think that most writers I feel like to hear some kind of I don't know. I feel like most people write for some kind of reaction or some kind
yeah,
of
but that's controlling because you want a reaction that's positive.
not necessarily
Oh, boy, you
the
know who wants negative
well the
reactions?
man that said that I have terrible taste in film and hate Christians. I was rather amused by that. But I don't,
Mhm.
no, it doesn't always have to be positive. Um, and again, it depends on the source of where it's coming from too. Like some people I like to rile up, if I'm being honest. But
Oh boy.
uh, no, I think it's most people want some kind of reaction to their craft. It's because what's the worst? Being mediocre and having nothing. So I will, yeah, of course. Do I want to hear somebody thinks I'm trash? But
Well,
I would also rather have that a negative reaction than just like meh.
this is a good this is a good segue to self-indulgence because another question was because you said you thought Pulp Fiction was or Quentin Tarantino
Oh,
is
I think I saw this comment,
self-indulgent.
and to
So
ask me
then
about Tar,
so then what do you think about
I
Tar?
don't think Tar is self-indulgent. That is not something I classify as that. I think that is a character study that is trying, and maybe according to some people's opinion, is not as multifaceted as they'd like it to be. But I love that film. I think it's brilliant. I think Blanchett's performance is cool, cold, and calculated, and troubling because again, I know I've said this before. There are moments where I think that I was participating in the joy for her that made me second guess myself as a human. But I and sure, maybe it doesn't tackle whiteness as much as it should, but again, considering the location of where it is. But no, I don't. I wouldn't say that that is self-indulgent. I think Quentin Tarantino, who as a filmmaker is somebody I will always want to watch his films. I don't always love his films. I think that he has certain vulnerabilities as well, and I don't think he can help himself. I don't think Tar, which is a film that was made in conjunction with the lead performer just as much as it was the director, really is suffering from the same sensibility.
That was a quality moment. Let's take a break. I thought we were done with this question, but I wanted to add that self-indulgence doesn't isn't always negative.
Yeah, and I don't think I always mean it as a negative way, in a negative sense either.
In relation to Pulp Fiction, I thought you were talking about specifically Quentin Tarantino's use of the N-word, like his character, like him uttering the word, which I feel like in the comments was conflated with like the general use of the N-word, which I thought in the video I was clear that the black characters who are using it and the racist gun shop owner, that made sense to the
Right,
story.
right.
So that's not my issue. It just felt like Quentin Tarantino, whose acting also wasn't the best, wanted to be in this film. And I think that's an example of how self-indulgence can sort of, like, I feel like it blinded him from like the actual art. Like it didn't benefit his art.
His self-indulgences, it felt like that of a teenage boy trying to be provocative to me, because watching that film in the context of, 2023, or as we move forward in time, is just what does this scene mean, and what was trying to be said, and it places it in a certain time capsule that now it can't ever. There's certainly not a timelessness specifically about that scene where would be appropriate for this white person to say this to this black man that's his friend. Uh,
But also, we gave the movie a very good score,
it,
right? You gave it 3.5.
well, people are often mad. It's like how people are mad about our score about Eve's Bayou being 3.5.
But 3.5 means very good.
I agree.
Like,
Yeah, I agree. No, masterpiece. Also, everybody is welcome to their own opinion. You should all have your own top 10 lists if you love cinema. And it shouldn't, what's the most depressing thing is seeing a bunch of lists that all look the same. Like, we are all different people that come from all different walks of life that have all different kinds of perspectives. My masterpiece doesn't have to be your masterpiece. I don't think Pulp Fiction is a masterpiece. I think he's done better films. I prefer Jackie Brown. I prefer Inglorious Bastards. And those are films that I would be much more willing to, go to bat for in defending a whole slew of bullshit. But Pulp Fiction, yeah, I think that was a great juggernaut of a film. It's a cultural moment, and that's something that can't ever be taken away from it. And I'm not trying to take that away from it, but I just didn't. I've had a lot of coffee. I think
yeah, we could probably stop this
okay.
topic. All right, moving on. Films released we didn't cover. Something called Blueback.
You watched part of this because I covered it for Sundance, or I watched for Sundance. I didn't cover it because this deserves to be on the worst list of the year of
Oh, what is
films
it
already.
about?
It stars Mia Wasikowska and Radha Mitchell and Eric Bana, about that young girl that goes back to her mother's, and there's that
That
big
fish. That's right.
that big blue fish.
That shit looked. You know
Excuse
what it
me.
felt like? What one of there was a very brief period where I attended like a mega church. I don't know what I was thinking, except I just wanted like
On your own,
on my own.
Patti LaBelle.
Yeah, on one and Michael McDonald. So really they weren't on their own. But written by the man who just passed, Burt Bacharach.
Okay, yeah.
But um those mega churches make movies. Not unlike like how the Scientologists make films.
Hmm.
That Blueback movie looked like one of those mega church movies.
Oh, this was painful to sit through. I hated it. And we reviewed. It's directed by Robert Connolly. This premiered at TIFF last year, and then Sundance had it in its spotlight section. But that opened this week, and we reviewed this man's last film, The Dry, starring Eric Bana, which as a film, ironically, was very dry.
Ooh, people did not like that review. They were mad
Why were they mad
that
that we didn't like it?
it might have been people who were affiliated with it. I don't know. But it was very dry. I didn't say it was bad. It was just very dull.
It was just very not interesting. I'm sorry, I didn't like your film.
Moving on, Operation Fortune, Ruth de Guerre.
Ruse de guerre, ruse of war. I emailed these production company, this distributor, about this. I don't know that this really was touted for press. I know some people saw it, but I was gone last week anyway, so I didn't push it. But Guy Ritchie has a new film. Aubrey Plaza's in it. Jason Statham. I would see it for Aubrey, and I did like Guy Ritchie's last film, Wrath of Man.
The film RRR was re-released.
Uh huh. Yep.
We reviewed that film and we got a lot of nasty messages because we didn't think it was a masterpiece. I didn't
Again,
say I didn't say the film was bad. I just
I didn't love it.
just like American movies that are very similar, because RRR is Indian, right?
Yep.
Just like these American movies that are like they have a budget, but it's not like
The biggest
the
budget.
biggest budget. So they're trying to do like Marvel level stuff
Mhm.
with like, uh it felt a little crunchy, and then the style of it just isn't my flavor. So again, it's just my opinion. If you love bombastic, loud, nonstop, then I guess it would be great. But
Yeah, not me. I also, usually singing and dancing in whatever language of cinema it is, usually takes me aback. And
also that movie is long as hell. That's what I remember from it, that it was long.
Yes, but again, it's just like my masterpiece doesn't have to be your masterpiece.
Next, Children of the Corn.
This got remade in 2020, and I don't know why it was delayed, but that got
I would
released.
love to see this movie.
It was filmed in Australia, directed by Kurt Wimmer. I'm assuming that's how you say his name. It looks like a very German name. Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm not really a fan of the 1984 original with Linda Hamilton, but uh, I loved. I have very fond memories of reading Stephen King's Night Shift as a kid, and this was a favorite story of mine. But I don't know. I feel like this film's been done to death.
The Forger.
I did watch this. I was supposed to write about it for us, but I didn't. True story about, based on a true story about a Jewish man during World War II that was forging documents and barely scraping by. This premiered at Berlin in 2022, directed by Maggie Perrin.
A Little White Lie.
Second film directed by Michael Marin, starring Michael Shannon, but then it also had Kate Hudson, and we had very limited time this week, so I'm like, do I want to waste time on Kate Hudson? No, so we didn't watch it.
Projects of Interest. The Gorge.
Okay, now you know I always love new Sigourney Weaver news.
Oh, that's this one.
Yes. So Sigourney's got a new project. Although some of the team behind the camera I'm not the most excited about, but it's going to star Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, who I like her, and it's directed by Scott Derrickson. And to be honest, like been I haven't really been excited for a Scott Derrickson movie for a long time. I do like The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I think the first hour of Sinister is good. I don't like Doctor Strange. I didn't like The Black Phone. But this sounds interesting. It sounds like a sci-fi love story, big action film, and it was unfortunately written by the man who wrote The Tomorrow War, which I also didn't like,
Oh, with Chris
with
Pratt.
Chris Pratt. That
Mm.
was a terrible, terrible film. But I will watch anything with Sigourney Weaver and champion it. So here we are.
Did you mention what the movie's about?
Yeah, a love story. It's supposedly this love story that's a big action film with
Oh,
sci-fi elements.
oh.
Not that much is known about it.
Trey Edward Schultz.
Who directed Waves and It Comes at Night. He has a new film that the plot and title of are under wraps. But Jenny Ortega, who is Wednesday Addams and in the last Scream movie, and Barry Cogan, who you like from or Cowgan from Banshees of Inisherin, and The
Oh, I
Weeknd.
did like him. Yeah, and I don't. Well, I think it's a horror film because I read a headline that I read a headline on social media about how this film is turning into like torture porn.
Oh,
So it's a horror film, I think.
okay.
Out of Season.
Stéphane Brisé, French
Stefan King.
Stéphane Brisé, of notable French director, has a new film called Out of Season. That's the English language translation, starring Guillaume Canet, the husband of Marion Cotillard, and Alba Rohrwacher. I think that is in production right now. For the most part, I usually like his films.
Helene Catet and Bruno Forzani.
They are a Belgian filmmaking duo, husband and wife. I interviewed Bruno Forzani over The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears, which is probably damn near a decade ago. Their first film, I've liked them since their first film, Amer. They were last on hand with Let the Bodies Sunbathe, which I also really liked. But apparently they're working on some new large international co-production. So that should be exciting because what they can do with little money is very impressive. But they are kind of peripheral genre filmmakers. But if you've never seen anything of theirs and you like weird, wonky cinema that doesn't exactly need to make sense, look them up.
Marcel Pagnol biopic.
Marcel Pagnol
Pagnol.
biopic. Sylvain Chomet, a very notable animator, finally has a new project underway, apparently. He wasn't doing that Fellini thing for a while. I don't think that ever panned out. But he's probably best known for The Triplets of Belleville, which is also damn near 20 years ago, and The Illusionist. But he is directing a biopic about the famed French author who had, of course, that notable Marseille trilogy of the three stories of Fanny, Caesar, and Marcel, which Alexander Korda made, I think, in the 30s. Criterion has them on disc. Daniel Auteuil remade at least the first two. I wonder, did he finally remake the third chapter of that? Anyway, yeah, that's happening.
Les Romans de Jim.
Le Roman de Jim, the ninth film directed by the Lerieux brothers, who have had some. I think I liked 21 Nights with Patty the most, but they are an interesting French filmmaking duo.
Lastly, I swear.
Samuel Thies has a third film. I technically correct. He co-directed his 2014 Party Girl. I think that had three directors, and I liked his last film, Softy, about this coming of age story about this young boy who is uncomfortably young and makes a pass at his straight married teacher, uh, which felt like something that would never be handled in in a way that is meaningful but also appropriate in any English language capacity. But that was a really interesting film. But Anaïs Demoustier, Valeria Bruni Tedeschi, and Antoine Reinhardt are going to be in his new film.
Do you remember the song I Swear by All for One?
Yep.
Memories. Movies watch for fun. You rewatched Scream,
Yeah.
and then you rewatched Scream 2.
Last night, yeah.
You know?
I don't enjoy those films.
Well, then we can move on. You watched Bless Their Little Hearts.
This was on Mubi while I was stranded this week elsewhere. I really liked this. Directed by Billy Woodbury, who I think only made one documentary after this. Black filmmaker. It's set in, I think it's 1986. It was shot in Watts and Compton, and it's about this black family trying to survive. It's shot in stark black and white. It could have been the 50s. It was written by Charles Burnett, Killer of Sheep and To Sleep with Anger fame, and very well written. I think it was very accomplished. Burnett's own children played the kids of this husband and wife that are just trying to get by, but really great performance from Casey Moore, who plays the wife. And we just saw Casey Moore in her only other notable film, Daughters of the Dust. She played Hagar. Uh, but wow, I can't believe this person wasn't in more film. It's just a travesty because this was excellent. So if you have a Mubi subscription, I highly recommend checking out Bless Their Little Hearts.
Life Sentence.
And then I watched this on Mubi, and I'm a big Arturo Ripstein fan, the notable Mexican auteur. And he had this film in 1979 starring Pedro Armendariz Jr. It's about a pimp and thief who is finally hemmed up enough to where he wants to mend his ways, gets out of prison, finds a mentor, becomes a banker, only to be roped back into a life of crime when he's blackmailed by these dirty policemen. And there are a lot of flashback memories, but it's set basically over one day. But I thought this was a lot of fun. And sometimes it's hard to get a hold of Ripstein's earlier stuff, so I highly recommend checking that out if you're a fan of his. But it's also I think it's written by the novel it's based on is from the 40s or 50s from a notable author named Louise Spota, who wrote something really interesting I want to read called In the Palm of Your Hands, which there's a film version of that too. But he updates that to like late 70s corruption in the Mexican government kind of thing. And it's very interesting.
Well, I watched a few zingers. I watched the 2006 film Who Made the Potato Salad, directed by Coke Daniels. It stars someone we all know, Jaleel White, who was Steve Urkel. But there are some other notable people in it, like Ella Joyce, Tom Lister Jr., Gary Owen, Michael Collier, D. Ray Davis, Eddie Griffin, who's has a really weird cameo that's really long, where he sends a sex tape to his ex's dad to share with her. Weird. But anyway, this movie was terrible, and I had seen the movie I feel like I had seen it like at the video store when we used to go, and then
I remember that title.
Yeah, Jaleel plays a cop who has just gotten engaged to this lovely young woman, and she's like, well, you should probably meet my parents. Like, yeah. They live in San Diego and her family's in South Central LA, and they show up, and these people are ridiculous. It's pretty bad. I don't have a lot to say about it. The use of the N-word by D. Ray Davis is pretty amusing, but then it gets really old. Next, I watched a BET original, the 2022 film Bid for Love, directed by Arthur Muhammad. One of the writers' names is Entice. It's like N''Tyse. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But I didn't recognize any of the people in it except for Tammy Roman. She's in it, playing a therapist. who looks like they have to stop every other line so she could like line.
Mhm.
So it's real choppy.
Oh,
But
that's the one that you told me about, and I looked up Tammy Roman's filmography, and I said you should watch House of Vicious.
that's right. I will say though, I like this style of film, like storytelling, because it's very melodramatic. There's a lot going
Oh, it's
on.
soap opera, right?
That's what, yes, exactly. So I like that. I just think the production quality is really poor and the acting is really poor. I
Mhm.
wish I I would love to see these movies continue, like these types of movies continue, but we need better acting and better production because it's just, I mean, it's not even at the level of a soap opera.
Mhm.
So that's unfortunate. Okay, I watched the sequel to the movie The Reef. It's called The Reef Stalked. It came out last year, directed by Andrew Trauke. I I don't know how you mess up. I would give this half a star, but I can't because I think it was made like they were trying to make a decent movie. So
Mhm.
it's not on the level of like Man Eater. Oh my god, I hated the lead actors. The story is so generic. Like
Of course.
there was some trauma. So why does it always have to be trauma for you to want to like save your life or fight for your life? And then the shark component, we really don't even see the shark except for like some stock footage. Oh my god, all the decisions these women make, it you would think it'd be so bad it's good, but I was so frustrated. Someone asked us in our live video yesterday the last time a film made me cry inside, and it
Mhm.
was this one
No.
because it was so utterly frustrating, the decisions they were making. I'm afraid of like what's in the water, so that there is some fear associated with it, but
Sure.
horribly done.
Primal Fear starring Edward Norton.
So then I had to cleanse my palate and I rewatched Open Water, the
Oh boy.
2003 film that
God, I
I
haven't seen that in years.
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It is because it's about a couple who go on like they go on like one of those boat tours with I think they're in the Caribbean and like a diving tour, and somehow the person in charge miscounts like
Mhm.
everyone who returns, so they leave those two out there and they're out there for like a couple nights, I think.
Mhm.
And it's just terrifying because it was very famous at the time because they actually shot in the ocean
Mhm.
and there was footage of them like actually near sharks.
Yeah, I remember that was a Sundance hit. I remember what was the theater in downtown Minneapolis?
Lucky.
No, like the lagoon and the one that's closed now,
Oh, the land, no, the uptown.
the Uptown. I
Yeah.
remember running to see that at the Uptown, and there was a huge line.
It's yeah, it still is terrifying and the end is so sad where the woman, because her husband's already been
Mhm. Yeah, well, I
bit and
remember one of them
eaten,
dies first.
she just kind of gives up and takes off her oxygen tank and she just sinks,
Mhm.
and that's the end. And then we see the people realize that they forgot about them, but yeah, it still has a lot of impact. Unfortunately, there are entries in the obituary section. Rico Browning.
Yeah, he's the man in the costume and the as the creature in the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh,
He's 93.
and then we talked about Tom Sizemore, I think, last week on our
Mhm.
honorable mentions because he wasn't doing well health wise. Well, he
Mhm. Yeah.
ended up dying. He was only 61.
Yeah, but I remember in the 90s had a lot of drug addiction issues that lots of people would talk about. And I think I remember him being quite open about as well. Um,
Well,
I
that's
don't know if that
unfortunate.
contributed to it, but yeah. And we just watched him in Devil in a Blue Dress.
Devil in a blue
I
dress.
always think of him in the movie The Relic, which is a favorite of mine as a kid with
Mm.
Penelope Ann Miller.
Let's take another quick break. So today's secret movie was Nick's choice. However, he had to make a last minute pivot
I did.
because our live video earlier this week, well, I guess technically last week, oh, the cat's making an appearance, um, was Raquel Welch.
Hmm.
And we gave 5 options, and y'all chose the film Bedazzled. And lo and behold, she's not really in it. She has like the smallest cameo.
Because I'd never seen it, but
And she's probably the worst part of the movie. So then Nick felt like we should probably redeem her and choose a film where she's the lead.
where she's the lead and has considerable agency. Uh, is what I was trying for.
So you chose one of the other options in the poll, which no one voted for, which
Right.
was the 1971 British Western film directed by Burt Kennedy called Hanny Calder.
Mhm.
Let me just read the synopsis. After she is raped and her husband is murdered, a woman hires a bounty hunter to instruct her in the use of a gun so she can get her revenge on the three outlaws responsible. So that sounds pretty intense, right?
Mhm.
This shit was like almost like a slapsticky rom-com for most of it, and then it's like it's bookended with the rape in the beginning and then her killing the three men who raped her
Uh-huh.
in the end. But the middle hour is ridiculous.
Yeah. Again, I had never seen this. It may yeah, I don't know.
The synopsis is basically the entire movie. So when it says that she's gonna pay this bounty hunter, she meets him because these three guys, the Clemens brothers, one of
Mhm.
whom is played by,
Well, there are 3 very notable actors, but Ernest Borgnine is kind of the central one, but Strother Martin and Jack Elam.
oh, I only recognized Ernest Borgnine.
Strother Martin, the same year, has a very iconic film moment. He's the warden in Cool Hand Luke, who says, "What I think what we have here is a failure to communicate," or whatever that
Oh,
line is.
interesting. Well, yeah, I didn't realize that. But these are the Clemens brothers, and they have just robbed a bank and they're on the run. And they come upon this house where Raquel and her husband are living. They end up killing the husband, brutally like gang raping her. And after they are done, they light her house on fire.
Oh, yeah, they sure do.
So she's just left out naked with a poncho on when all of a sudden this bounty hunter, played by,
Robert Culp.
shows up with two horses and a dead man on it, on one of the horses, saying like, please help me, I need your well, I need water, my horses need water. And of course she's still in shock and afraid, so she assaults him and knocks him out with a gun, like hits him on the head. And the next morning when he wakes up, he sees that she's taken his gun and is like practicing shooting.
Mhm.
And then he disarms her and leaves, but she's begging him like, no, please show me how to use a gun, I'll pay you. But she doesn't have money, so she's gonna pay him with some vagina, I guess. Is, well, that's what she's implying.
That's been recently incredibly traumatized, but yeah.
And he doesn't want that.
Mhm.
He's like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. I have shit to do. So she follows him like a puppy until he finally goes, fine, I'll show you, but we need to get you a gun. And they're on the West Coast, like in a border town in the US.
Mhm.
So he's like, well, we have to cross the border to Mexico to this guy who can make you a gun,
Mhm.
which I thought was the most stupid part of the story.
Sure.
The bounty hunter has two guns plus the rifle or whatever the one that she used to knock him out with. So they have three guns on the minimum. Why are you making this long trek to go have a specialty gun made for her when she doesn't have any money? And it's never discussed like how they're paying for this new gun.
Mhm.
It's just like this other guy played by,
Oh, Christopher Lee, Sir Christopher Lee, in his only Western appearance was in this film, and
he
I do like seeing him.
well, yeah, he's fun to watch, but he makes her a gun. And it takes so long for them to get to this point where they get the gun, and the
Mhm.
training of showing her how to use the gun is so tedious, which we can get into. But they're at Christopher Lee's place, and some like Mexican banditos show up, and
Mhm.
there's a fight where the bounty hunter is killed. So now Raquel's kind of on her own because he's
No,
gone.
he's not killed there.
He's not killed
No,
there.
they helped Christopher Lee out and get away, and Robert Culp had a face-off in the town with the 3
Oh, that's
brothers, and
right. And there's a scene where the slow motion shooting,
Ernest
stabbing.
Ernest Borgnine knifes him, yeah.
You're right. So anyway, now she is in the town to kill the three brothers, and she does one by one,
Mhm.
and then she's done. She just leaves.
Mhm.
Ugh.
Yeah, I didn't hate this film as much as you did, but it was written by Burt Kennedy under a pseudonym. And Burt Kennedy directed a lot of westerns, and I just think this feels like so many other things, including that Nicolas Cage film that opened earlier this year, The Old Way. But as soon as it opens, I'm like, oh, so this is like I Spit on Your Grave as a western, and so
Which
this
would have been so much better.
it did, but it fits in that very uncomfortable lexicon of rape revenge films. It's like, how much is this exploitation and how much is this actual? Does she have any agency? Because I don't feel
Yeah.
like Hanny Calder, for this film named about her, really gets to exude any.
No. And I think that's why I dislike it so much, because like like this traumatizing thing happens to her as a woman during this era because it's like the 1800s, and is no one would have cared what happened to her anyway, so she has to take matters into her own hands. And instead of us seeing her become like independent and the anger being exuded, like we don't get any of that. We get her having one nightmare.
which is what convinces Robert Culp to help her.
But after that, she's just acting like, I mean, it really feels like a rom-com where she's just like happy to follow this man around and he's teaching her things, and they're kind of, the score is very inappropriate, I think. It's very like doo, 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 doo,
The
doo.
score is funny because also the composer Ken Thorne would win an Oscar for another film this year. A funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. So,
The Great Western Forum in Inglewood.
uh,
Um,
and
my,
Raquel Welch also notably executive produced this.
Oh wow. Well, that might explain my next note, which is I thought, well, luckily she was from the fire, she was able to salvage her makeup bag and her bump it, because
Mm-hmm.
she is fully done, honey.
Uh-huh.
Full face of
Oh
makeup.
yeah, this is like watching Jennifer Lopez in
Oh,
this
she's
kind
wearing
of film.
foundation, lip color, blush, eyeliner, her mascara, her eyebrows are fully done.
I mean, she looks good, but
Her hair, she it's teased. I mean, she's wearing a bump it of a
yeah,
sort.
she is.
It's like, this is insane.
She was giving me Shania Twain vibes
She
in
looks
this role.
great.
She does, but it's also kind of takes away from the stakes.
I don't have a lot of notes because there really wasn't much going on. The time it takes them to get to the gun maker and then her practicing shooting is so basic. We spend a lot of time because when she finally gets the gun, the bounty hunter is making her do like one thing, which is like she has this stick that she's holding in front of her horizontally with a rock tied to a string on it, and she's supposed to roll it up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And then as she does it more and more, he makes the rock heavier, I guess, to improve her like manual dexterity and strength.
Mm-hmm.
That goes on for a long
It
time. And
does.
really, as the audience, I'm like, okay, I don't know that we needed to watch this much of this.
And then the brothers are just so over the top
They're
terrible.
almost like, so that's what I hated too, is they're almost like the Three Stooges.
Mm-hmm.
These men brutally raped this woman and they're bank robbers. They're awful, awful people, and they're made like slapsticky.
They are, yeah. Every time Borgnine shouts at Strother Martin,
The mood of these characters, like the mood, the characters, the score, it didn't match sort of the heinous opening of this film, and
right?
that really rubbed me the wrong way. It just felt so like
And then you have
disrespectful
And
to
then you
me.
have other characters like Stephen Boyd, who's the one that's trying to, technically seduce Charlie Heston on Ten Commandments, as he's credited as the preacher who shows up in two scenes and is the one that helps her. He's the one that shoots Ernest Borgnine in the end at the prison where there's the last
That's
standoff.
right.
Like
Yeah, he's so random.
he comes to see Christopher Lee. That's where we first see him to have a new chamber made for his gun, and then he just pops up again, and it's I don't know. Let's just
Yeah,
feels like
actually, that served no purpose to
just
me.
an extra kind of tangent. And then, of course, I find Diana Dors entertaining, who's the brothel madam that appears briefly at the very end. Who's Raquel Welch? One of the Clemens brothers is with a prostitute in this brothel. I think it's Jack Elam, and she's going up the stairs, and Diana Dors stops. She's like, "When did I hire you?"
Ugh, bitch.
Because we just she's in that movie Berserk with Joan Crawford, and also Skolimowski's Deep End.
Well, speaking of that scene at the end when Raquel kills that bandit, he falls out the window and lands on one of the
Yeah,
prostitutes, and it's totally like a
yeah.
slapsticky. Wow. Okay. Um,
And
when
then I also like the final song in the film.
by Bobby Hannah.
It's called Life Never Is Easy.
Oh my God. If
It's
you
like
watch
if Yoda wrote the lyrics.
yeah, yes, exactly. The only reason to watch this movie is to listen to the theme song at the end.
Not unlike a Franco Nero spaghetti western called Kioma. If you haven't seen Kioma, you should look up the theme song to that.
Oh God. So these bandits who raped Raquel, they have a bounty out for them. So when she kills the first one, she turns him into the sheriff. And so two things. First of all, he goes like, "You're out here shooting people up and blah blah blah." And what does he say? Because
He's
she goes, "Why aren't you doing anything?" He's like, "Well, they're just running around being bandits."
there. No, he's like, she's causing the trouble by getting them. He's like, they're just minding their own business out here being wanted.
Yes, that's right. Like, what? Why aren't you doing your job? But anyway, she gets to collect the bounty, which is $750, and the sheriff just has it in a drawer.
Mhm.
$750. Do you
Mhm.
know how much $750 was in like 1890?
Yeah.
Like $25,000.
Mhm.
He just had it in a drawer.
Yeah.
That shit was crazy to me. Um, then adding to like how ridiculous I thought the tone was when Ernest Borgnine gets killed, it's like a slow motion gun shot knife
Mhm.
throwing scene that gets reproduced in the end when the preacher pops back up.
Mhm.
I just don't understand. One of the bandits I thought has this really shrill voice and he's acting like a I thought it could have been Leslie Jordan.
Rufus. That's Strother Martin.
Like what are we doing with this movie? Again, watching Raquel her character learn how to shoot was so tedious.
Yes, because she's never seen as being kind of powerful.
Never.
Mhm.
Never.
I think it's a better Robert Culp film.
Even when yes, I agree. Even when she because she gets shot in the arm, so she goes to see a doctor and they put her in a sling. And
Mhm.
even when she kills the second brother, it doesn't seem powerful because she's kind of disabled and she kind of like sneak attack him.
Mhm.
I just don't understand. I know it was the early 70s, but I don't understand the point of this story.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So this is a major influence apparently on Kill Bill, which you haven't seen, but
Mm-mm.
I definitely can see that. But surprisingly, it's also apparently a really loose remake of a Roger Corman film called Gunslinger, which I have seen because there's a mystery science theater treatment of it, starring Beverly Garland, and of course, it's much less salacious. She's not raped like like Raquel is in this, but it's funny you can see it if you're aware of those films. But
What would you give this
oh,
movie?
and also I wanted Burt Kennedy, who I already mentioned is the director. While I didn't love this film, I do really like his adaptation of Jim Thompson's The Killer Inside Me, which has a fantastic. I think it's Stacy Keach and I love her Susan Tyrrell, who you've seen in Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. And of course was remade by Michael Winterbottom, very infamously starring Jessica Alba, Casey Affleck, and Kate Hudson in 2010. But the original, if you haven't seen it, it's a Burt Kennedy film, definitely worth seeking out. I would give Hanny Calder 2 out of 5 stars, and it immediately made me want to watch a different Raquel film or be able to talk about Myra Breckenridge, which is a film that I think has subversive, powerful elements in it.
Well, I think I'm done with Raquel for a while, but I would give this film 1.5 out of 5.
Well, you like Myra Breckenridge.
I do, but I'm so disappointed that like I attempted to watch 2 Raquel films, and while I loved Bedazzled,
Mhm.
she was my least favorite part of
Sure,
that movie. She didn't give anything, and maybe that's not her fault. It was the director's fault. But then now in Hanny Calder, it's like she's not giving me anything.
sure.
So I wonder if she's just a pretty face.
Well, she was a sex symbol, but how did they handle sex symbols in the 50s, 60s, 70s? They were their fame was also kind of limiting, but
I mean, Myra Breckenridge works because it's so over the top. I also think Raquel gives a very flamboyant performance,
she
so it
does.
is fun.
And you have to remember, Candy Darling auditioned for that role. Hollywood was not ready to cast Candy Darling, who had some famous line about how Raquel Welch is apparently a better looking transvestite. But Myra Breckenridge is a transsexual character, but she's also a fantasy of Myron's, who's played by Rex Reed. So it would make sense to me that, I think ironically, considering a man like Rex Reed would consider himself to look like Raquel Welch as a woman. And so I think that there is a weird thing that film does work on certain levels.
Yeah, I would like to rewatch Myra Breckenridge, and we can do a podcast on it, but I'd probably wait a minute.
Sure.
Well, we're going to a brag, not to brag, but we're going to a drag brunch
Before they're illegal, y'all.
before they're illegal. So,
Not in this state, but I mean,
yeah,
the shame. Oh my God, the United States of America. Uh, can something just split it up? Like, can a natural disaster happen where I just don't have to deal?
we just need a big old asteroid to
Like,
destroy everything,
fuck you,
start from scratch.
Tennessee. Fuck you.
Well, now we can't post this on YouTube, but
We
anyway,
can't.
you can't use the F
Oh,
word
you
more
post
than
these?
once.
Oh, sorry. Well, they need to
No,
be.
I don't post these. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
Well, my battery's about to die. What else do you want to say? What are we watching this week? Scream 6
Scream 6, John Wick 4.
and another one.
65, I think, comes out this
I'm
week.
only looking forward to 65.
Um, And then I just finished reading Hubert Selby Jr.'s Waiting Period, which actually was kind of difficult to get through because it's about this disgruntled VA worker who it's just a stream of consciousness for 150 pages. Who, although his method of killing people that hurt him is interesting because he again, it's only from his perspective, so who knows if it's real, but breeds these E. coli cultures and goes and like is poisoning these people and they're dying. Um, and then I started reading The Cement Garden, which I think is the first novel of Ian McEwan, who's probably best known for The Comfort of Strangers.
Mm,
Uh, I didn't put it together, so I've had this book. It's very interesting. It's reminding me of like Fist in the Pocket, kind of about this dysfunctional family mixed with VC Andrews. And there's a film version of this from the early 90s, directed by Andrew Birkin, who is the brother to Jane Birkin, and stars Charlotte Gainsbourg, so her uncle. But you know the Madonna song "What It Feels Like for a Girl."
okay.
You know that's Charlotte Gainsbourg on the track, who's speaking.
Oh, I didn't know
Secretly, you'd
that.
love to know what it's like to be a girl. Boys can do, girls can wear jeans, but boys can't. You know that whole
Hmm.
thing that is from this film, from The Cement Garden. That
Oh,
that
interesting.
monologue is lifted from.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, ta ta for now.